Good morning. I'm Malcolm Graham Wood, and I'm here at Core Finance for my regular CEO interview. Today, my guest is Colin Harrington, the CEO of Zephyr Energy. Morning, Colin. Welcome to the
Morning.
show.
Yeah, morning, Malky. Nice to see you again.
It's great to have you, especially given how busy you must have been in the last few weeks and months, to be honest. But um, let's just get straight into it because you've had an exciting time, and it's a year since you first drilled this thing. So we're talking about well 36 to the Paradox Basin. You've been giving us bits and pieces of the news from the well in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Mhm.
Would you like to give me a bit of an overview on what you've told us so far? Then maybe we can dig a little deeper into it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm delighted with how this has turned out. And if you just take it at a high level, we've drilled another well safely and successfully. We hit the target. It's kind of remarkable. 10,000 feet down. 15 feet from the old well. We hit it just the way we wanted to, and we found hydrocarbons, which it's a great start, especially in a very immature play here, where nobody's done what we've been doing here. This is a brand new play. So we flowed the well. We've seen a much richer condensate yield here than expected, and that's huge. That goes way beyond this one well to have much bigger implications for the play as a whole. We produced a great peak rates, and for an onshore well, onshore U.S., what we've seen so far is really, really strong. We still have some items to clean up here, but overall, I'm just absolutely thrilled with these first few steps. And as you mentioned, we're going to continue on and continue, you know, uh, continue working up the well and getting it for a longer term production test. So we're moving ahead with that really quickly.
Good. Well, I'm very pleased, and it certainly already sounds more exciting than the market seemed to have picked up, and some of us from the announcements. But let me start off. I'm going to dig into a few bits and pieces, but
Sure.
obviously, particularly, I'd like to talk about the condensate levels.
Mhm.
You mentioned that you've got much higher condensate levels, presumably than you expected, um, and I'd like to know how significant this is, how long it'll last. Is it just something that comes out to begin with, or will it go on? And how profitable is it to have such liquids here? We weren't expecting it.
Yeah. Well, if you go back to what we saw in the 16-2 when we drilled the 16-2, that was a much gassier well, and that's in the northern part of our acreage. But we've got two data points now in the southern half of our acreage. It's actually the southern two-thirds of our acreage. One is a historical well there called the 2811, which we produced a bit. That's a very oily well, condensate-rich well. And now the 36-2, which is again on the southern two-thirds of the White Sands unit, and it's a very similar mix. So, overall, the economics are much better. It's not that I'm not bullish natural gas, but obviously, right now, gas prices are depressed. And when we did, for example, our earlier CPR, we didn't have very strong gas pricing, and we used a much higher gas ratio across the acreage. So I think when you look at the implications for everything across the board here, particularly as you think about a larger development, and a lot of that will be focused in the oily acreage, at least to begin with. It's got huge implications for the economics, and I'm really, really excited about that. And it may have implications for how we ultimately develop this out too.
And so you'll be giving presumably condensate test numbers equally with the rest of it. So
Yeah.
be able
And
to.
to your point as to whether this rate will be stable or not, we do think, we have a long production history with the 2811. We have all the data there that's produced for a decade or so. I don't think we'll see a lot of change in the mix here over time. But what we will do is we're working now to flow the well at different rates to see where we get the best economics and the best ratio. So there is some fine tuning to do here overall, but at a high level, it's just a pretty big difference.
Well, that's great. Um, I'd like to talk about one of the other things that people have asked about, and compartmentalization is a long word, but it's apparently it's going to be important here. And this, as I understand it, is because you've done a pretty short horizontal here in this well, but in future, will your wells be longer horizontals and therefore cut across the various different sections that you have down there, or
Yeah.
how will you do with the horizontals and so on?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. This is going to be a hybrid play in the end. And this well in particular, we designed so we can do a longer lateral at a later date. We originally drilled into this natural fracture, and the response was so significant, as you remember from the blowout incident last year. We've elected to drill this part of the natural fracture first and produce from it. But at some point, we'll go in and run up to a 10,000-foot lateral off of this. And I think we're really incentivized to do that now that we know the condensate mix here. So that is a relatively low cost way to extend out this well at a future date. But that's not what we're going to do right now. Right now, we're going to continue cleaning up this well, and we'll produce this natural fracture to the best extent we can.
So that's offers every opportunity for being better in the longer term with the laterals, depending on how you decide to do them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Here we only have 130-foot lateral or so in the productive part of the zone. 10,000 feet would be much longer, but we're trying to hit the natural fractures first and produce them as long as we can. And then we will go in, and with the longer laterals, you may pick up some other natural fractures, but you also probably, hydraulically stimulate it at some point.
Yeah, I can see that coming, obviously.
Yeah,
Um,
we've done that at the 16 too and had a good response with that. So
yeah,
we certainly want to hit natural fractures. They improve the productivity of the well, but we also, will always preserve the ability to fracture it at a later date.
yeah, and you have no water here, do you?
Yeah, it's really been nice. So again, that helps the economics quite a bit. You're not having to truck any water and dispose of it. So highly, highly encouraging sign that it's got the right condensate yield and no water.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other things that's been causing people grief in terms of probably even people like me, we know probably too much to be we know dangerous amounts about it, which is not very much. But
Yeah.
it's a situation about the mud and the mud higher mud weights that you've been putting down, which I have presumed to be to avoid the blowout sort of situation that you had last time, and whether it's to just to avoid the blowouts, and therefore you were expecting, having put it in, that you'll have to get it out, and therefore you've been saying that there'll be acid treatment and so on. Can you
Mhm.
walk me all through that little? Because I don't think any of us quite understand what's been going
Sure.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so absolutely. I mean, this well has produced, but we're definitely seeing evidence that A, we haven't gotten all the mud back yet. B, we pumped a lot of kill mud down in the old wellbore when we had the well control incident. So there's a fair amount of mud that's still down there. But this isn't something that's a technically difficult job. This is something that's done every day in the oil industry, as you know. So we've worked with Halliburton to design a specific acid. It's kind of like a toilet cleaner, it's Drano. But we've designed the right mixture for our mud, and then it gets pumped down into the reservoir, not enough to with pressure, but not enough to create new fractures. It really channels the acid, pretty far into the old fractures. And what we'd like to see is just that mud return. And we did this already. We did a very small acid job when we started the
Yeah,
production test because the area around the wellbore, we knew there was going to be a fair amount in there. We weren't sure what the reaction was going to be from the rest of the fractures. So I know people don't like this uncertainty, but it really is something that we expected we might have to do. It's going to take us a longer time to do it, but we'll be doing this operation in early August, back to production testing again. And as I keep trying to remind people, this is a new basin, a new play. There's always going to be things we learn going through this, and certainly how we use mud in the future or what type of other pressure control you know techniques we use, we'll visit that. But for now, we think it's a pretty simple solution to clean up the wellbore first and the fractures, and then again, we always come with an array of procedures and options if we need to go further than that. But right now, this seems like a low cost, low risk, easy way to get the rest of the mud out.
right. So I was going to ask the next question: is how long do you think it will take you to get all of this mud out? But now you say when you go back with the next acid job, it should be what, weeks rather than days?
Oh, yeah, the job won't take very long itself, and then it'll sit and work its magic for a day or two, and then we'll start producing it back, and then we'll be able to just run a slightly longer production test. But we certainly would hope to have news into the market by the end of August at the latest in terms of how how it's done, whether we see the pressure respond like we want to, and what the larger implications are.
So you're doing another test right now, though, aren't you?
No, we'll be starting it after the acid job. So right now the well's shut in and just building pressure, and we're watching, watching to see its response. When you do these well tests, it's a highly structured process. You do different choke settings, different rates. You try to manage it to get to the most effective place, obviously, but you also have periods of shut-in time where you respond, watch the pressure response, and see how it comes back. And so as we got into this, we've decided it'll be helpful to really clean out the well further and to see what the response is like a second time around. I know it's frustrating that people don't have a clear response yet, but at the same time, we're doing what's right for the long term here.
So you'll start that acid process anytime now in the next few days?
We'll start in it'll probably be a few days into August, a week into August, something like that. So
And so
getting
that
on the Halliburton schedule, getting the acid made up, and then we'll be back out on site and doing that. So we certainly hope to be producing again by mid-month.
well, will you then, after you've done the just to make it absolutely certain, after you've completed the acid treatment, you'll then start another full
Yep,
testing process, which will
exactly.
give you some further details. What will that take? 2 or 3 weeks of
Yeah,
end of
yeah, I think
August, I think?
again, we'll have to see what the response is from the reservoir, and we'd like to produce it now that we know what this GOR mix is too. Every barrel we produce, we can sell, and doing a slightly longer production test is absolutely fine. So we may report on it, but decide to produce it for longer in the near term.
So one of the interesting things is, and I hate to say this to you because it makes me cringe as well, but basically the share price has gone down since you started. The share price tripled from April to June, 2 to 6p or whatever. Everyone was all excited, and we've had the results of the well in piecemeal terms.
Mhm.
Were you always expecting to do that, or have you just sort of, because of the various things that have come out the way they have, you've decided to just show everybody what the results are as you know them, so that there's nothing
Yeah.
hidden behind the casing, as
Yeah,
it
I
were?
mean, we try to generally update people, and we're straight shooters, as you know, in our RNSs. We're not trying to
Yeah,
overlay.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but we certainly do try to inform the market as we make progress. Here, we had told people that we expected to have an initial result by mid-August, or sorry, mid-June, July. It's been that kind of summer. I'm
Yeah.
exceptionally busy, but we wanted to put out a result when we got it, and to us, for me, it was so favorable with the condensate mix with the peak rates that we thought it was important to share with the market. But as I keep trying to reiterate as well, you learn from every bit of the operation here, and what we learned through this bit was we need to go in and clean it out more, and try to make sure we're maximizing the effectiveness of this well. So we're going to do that, and I'm sure that frustrated some people, but versus a month of silence, I'm sure people would possibly take that the wrong way as well. So you can't
Yeah.
please the day traders. I think our long-term holders are certainly willing to stick with us and wait as we get through the next bit of data.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm sure they will. And I think the point is that what we all really want to see is when you do the acid test, and then get a decent flow
Yep.
rate by the end of August, beginning of September, and then it would be nice to be able to look at it and say you have now got a decent flow rate, and
Yep.
it indicates where we were. Because the bottom line is, so a few minutes ago you said, don't forget we're in sort of uncharted territory a bit here. This is
Yep.
not all something it's a prospect which hasn't been drilled over very much already,
Yep.
and you're not 100% certain how it's going to be, but it does look really, really exciting still, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. No question. And I think for me, what's exciting here is I believe we have enough data now to start talking with industry partners as well. Now that we know the fluid mix, we have two good data points in the southern part of the acreage. We know what the north looks like. I think it's a really good time for us to take this and go out and start to think about, is there a way to accelerate this? Not going and doing equity raises ourselves, but to bring in a partner who could just add some oomph here, because I think it's a really attractive set of assets.
I'm sure people will be really, really keen to know that, and that there's been nothing deliberate about holding this back. It's just you're learning all the time. Have you been on the rig a lot of the time and watching them?
It's been a hot summer out there, but yes, I have spent quite a bit of time out there.
I'm looking forward to coming over myself. So I think in conclusion, because I think I've dragged as much out of you as I possibly can.
Yeah.
If you could just go over just briefly, where do we go from here? I mean, we know you're about to do the acid test and everything else, but and you've said you've got a farm out process, but perhaps you could just give us an overview of where you see the Paradox from here and Zephyr within that process.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's twofold. I think first and foremost, we want to get the result from this well and then size our infrastructure and try to get this thing producing and cash flowing online. And not just the 36.2, but the 28.11 and the 16.2. And that'll be a series of months as we go through it. But I think that'll be very helpful overall to show that this thing is capable of longer term production. So that's where I would like to be with the Paradox. We're certainly, already looking at where we would drill next and what we would do. But I do think not pausing, but reaching out to parties and trying to, we're at a place right now in the U.S. where there's a lot of inventory that has been drilled up, and a lot of the core basins are well understood, and you've got shrinking inventory there. So it is a good time, in my opinion, to look for partners and see if we can find somebody to help us drill. Beyond that, in terms of the company, we've got our non-op business is doing great. You'll see that we just refinanced our bank debt and had the redetermination there. There's certainly a healthy margin there. We've got a great set of cash flows. We don't need to do anything in the near term. We are, really well positioned to continue to go out and do our developments. And certainly I'd like to continue to build up the non-op when we can, but our focus for the last year really has been trying to get the Paradox up and running, and that's going to remain the same.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Colin, thank you very much for taking time out of what is, I know, a massively busy schedule and the AGM coming up and everything else to speak to me today and on Core Finance, where today I've been Malcolm Graham-Wood doing my CEO interview. My guest has been Colin Harrington, who is the CEO of Zephyr Energy. Thank you very much indeed for joining me, Colin.
It's a pleasure as always. Thanks for having me on, and we'll hope to see you in person soon.
I look forward to that, and I wish you all the best with the rest of the work in the next few weeks and months. And I know you're building something really special at the Paradox, so good luck with that too.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Malcy. Talk soon.
Goodbye. That's all from me. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye now.